This week on the Movement RVA Podcast, we have semi-permanent guest host Chris Lawyer. We talk about Moonshine, why we hate the word box, and then I don't even know where it went after that. Welcome back. Welcome back.
That was a very intense one.
One time I sent Jake this recording, probably 30 to 40 seconds long, of various ways I was going to say welcome back. It was the funniest thing I've done in weeks.
How's that not on the podcast yet?
I don't know, A. And B, he goes, I don't get it.
I thought it was disingenuous to send me something of you saying how funny you were.
Isn't that how jokes work? You,
like,
you send them out to the world and the world responds back to you?
Look how funny I was tonight.
It was hilarious. It was also it was probably like 1:30 in the morning when I sent it to him.
It's brilliant. I think one of the things I tend to do that amuses the hell out of me and nobody else is I'll explain a joke that was very obvious after over and over and over again. And it's funny because, and I think it drives the people around me nuts, but I like it a lot.
I think it's an effective strategy for joking.
It's got to be fun.
Guys,
I like to bring your jokes down.
Business before pleasure. My name is Matt Cricchio. I'm joined by Jake Rao. We got a world that's listening to us right now, so we have to let them know who we are.
We've still not broken outside of Australia in the international market.
We have not.
Really?
I don't know. We haven't checked,
he's
probably.
Lying. I check every day.
Where are we at?
Maybe I check obsessively. No, we're in Spain now. Big time.
Big in Spain.
We're actually really big in Spain.
Is there 2 people?
There's like 4 people.
I don't believe it.
Our Instagram gets a lot of hits from the UK and Canada somehow. I don't know.
That's interesting. I like it.
Maybe it's just Instagram is big there.
Are there like powerlifting and strongman communities in these places?
For sure.
Okay.
Mostly powerlifters, I think.
So if you just turned on the shit show right now, we're the Movement RVA Podcast out of Richmond, Virginia, and this is episode 10. We have a repeat guest who can be called, I think, the semi-permanent guest host.
He can take that title.
As long as I don't call Jake that, it's cool.
But
What's that?
Semi-permanent.
Yeah, all right, yeah.
Chris Lawyer.
He'll come back again after this.
Next week. Chris Lawyer of the Weight Room in Richmond, Virginia.
He's canceling all his Tuesday sessions from here on out.
Well, you guys might have a couple people. We've got some local strongman competitors doing big things this weekend, so y'all might have some better candidates than me next week.
I've been tossing around some ideas. I feel like we've got good things coming up.
Chris, tell the people, or say hello to the people.
Hello, people.
If you didn't watch the other podcast episode that had Chris in it, Chris is the owner of the Weight Room here in Richmond, Virginia.
I think I said that.
Did you?
Yeah, but say it again.
Well, I didn't hear that
It
part.
hasn't changed. I still am.
He still is, so it's good.
Good. All right.
Hey, go to our YouTube if you like us. If you don't like us, subscribe. We put out new videos every week. On Thursdays, it's about movement, and then on Fridays, it's a podcast about everything.
Which you're listening to right now.
Yep. iTunes, Stitcher's the same thing. You can leave a 5-star review if you want. You can leave a 1-star review if you want. The only thing you can't do is not leave a review if you download us on iTunes.
I support this.
We have 6 5-star reviews right now.
That's more than some podcasts.
Some podcasts with very popular CrossFit athletes on them. You guys do the research. You'll find out.
Yeah, I don't know any of this.
Basically the best now. Basically internet stars.
With that, we should have some music that takes us into segments.
The next, yeah.
Yeah, but we probably won't. So I'll just say, what are your training goals this week, Jake?
Well, I feel like I was thinking about this, and it's like if my training goals actually changed every single week, I feel like I would be kind of a terrible person.
That's a classic trainer-coach problem, is that they're always trying to find the next thing to work on. And they used to, I don't know what they do now as far as people posting what they do on the internet, but it used to refer to that as I had more time back, 5-10 years ago. I would check in on these things, and they would call them chronic routine changers, and these folks who would do something for a minute, decide it wasn't going to work for them, and then change, and they never stayed on anything long enough to realize any sort of adaptation. So, of course, you're never going to get anywhere. You're just sort of spinning your proverbial wheels indefinitely.
I like to call it training ADD. That's my phrase for it.
Shiny object syndrome.
Yeah, we see a lot of it. I don't want to be subject to that. We are continuing. We did just start a barbell program here, like a group barbell class, and I'm doing the group programming with that class, along with some CrossFit. So my goals really haven't changed. My training's maybe changed slightly this past week, but nothing new there.
So this is the worst segment ever, is what you're saying?
Well, maybe if we had different people on every single time.
I started doing some new weird shit.
What'd you do?
every morning when I wake up, I do mobility.
That's smart.
And it's because I'm completely immobile, statuesque when I train. I'm unable to attain any position of any kind of safety. So my goal with this is probably by the end of the summer, I want to be able to squat to full depth, air squat with an upright torso, and I want to be able to hold that position for some period of time.
That's a fair goal. We have a really simple battery of lower body stretches and a few upper body things we do at the end of most of our workouts. If somebody's working one-on-one with a trainer, we recommend other people do it. We'll teach them how to do it when they come to the gym if they're willing to listen. But we don't really push it on folks. And one of the things we say when we go through is we'll only hold each stretch for maybe 15, 20 seconds. But we tell them if you do these and anything feels particularly tight or limited, or you're like, oh yeah, this is what I feel when I'm doing this movement and I can't get into positions, go back and do it again at the end and hold it for a minute or so. Because frequency and duration are how you increase range of motion. You can't just stretch once a week or go to a yoga class on Saturdays and actually expect it to do anything for your range of motion,
right,
because you're going to be undoing it the rest of the time.
Right.
Balance is the same way, coincidentally. So I do think people who take regular yoga programs will kind of skip steps on that by the thing they enjoy to do being so good for them. But ones who don't, if you have a deficit, you need to work on it regularly. And having a little routine you do daily is going to allow you to assess as things change. Because they will change. Maybe tighten the hamstrings now. Eventually start to realize that your hamstrings are getting some length, but it's more the glutes, and then, my hip flexors are tighter than I thought they were because everything else was so bad I didn't notice how bad they were. And
right,
having a little routine every day is a great idea. I think it's a very, very smart change to your program.
I remember the first time I really started paying attention to my flexibility at all, I was working at security. So it's a desk job, but there was not a lot to do. So every time I'd work, I don't know, at least 5 times a week, I just try to touch my toes, and I would try to hold it for a little while. I couldn't touch my toes. In like 3 weeks, I could touch my toes, which I feel like is not too bad.
Right.
And I've been able to touch my toes since then, which is not the biggest deal in the world, I guess, when it comes to your flexibility, but it's a start.
I would say my biggest mobility struggle is rack position.
Rack position?
Yeah, clean rack. My history as a power lifter and having a short upper arm makes all that very difficult. And all the things we do day-to-day life as far as internal rotators, anterior musculature tends to shorten very easily if you sit at a computer or stand in the same position all the time. It's just a kind of a perfect storm for loss for me. And my best reference for what you're talking about was when I started, I decided I had to have a good-looking clean before I opened my own gym. So
Look the part.
I had to look the part. So I started working on that, and I documented it, and I would stretch 2 to 3 times a day. I would do rope stretches, tricep stretches. I would do front squats, no hands front squats, and do stretch the rack position between sets, holding, which is probably still the best way to develop that rack position. I've got some more tricks.
Getting in the rack position.
Yeah,
and
I've got some neat tricks of the trade now, but if you don't know any of that stuff, just trying to get in that position between sets when you're resting is the way to do it. And in the 7th week, I was able to do front squats with a good clean rack. And I haven't met anybody who had that much trouble with it, who was as disciplined. But I feel like
took me years to get it, literally years.
That's amazing. But did you stretch 2 to 3 times a week and make it the priority in your training?
When,
2 to 3 times a day, rather.
Okay, so I say it took me years to get it. When I actually made it a priority, like you did, it took probably 2 months to get
right.
it.
And prioritization. If you have a deficit, you have to focus on it. It has to be to iron out things that they've probably become a problem because of your daily life. And so you're still working against that. So in order to make a difference, you have to impose a much, much stronger stimulus, which is, like I was talking about last time, trend-based seems to be that art of training.
Right.
I also feel like a lot of people don't even know what they need to be working on other than getting into that front rack position. They're not sure what they should be working on specifically, or they're chasing the wrong thing. Like, everyone goes to their wrists first because it hurts.
It's a mistake.
I think very rarely have I seen the wrists be part of the issue.
What limits it usually?
So, I think you should work through your internal rotators. Stretch out the pecs like a doorway stretch or something similar to that. There's a lot of cool things you can do to focus on that with a PVC pipe that would be hard to describe here. Maybe a little bit tricep length, little thoracic spine mobility is probably not a bad thing to work on if you're working on a good solid front rack.
For those that don't know, what is like an interior
internal rotator?
Internal rotator.
Short and medial rotators basically means the muscles that turn the humerus in If they're short, you can't get it out. So when you come into this position, you end up here.
Right.
And so you can't get your arm, like I'm there right now as I'm cold. You can't get into a good position here. You can't get the elbow up effectively.
If you're listening right now, Chris is just describing essentially where his arm position is for
people listen.
For the clean rack.
Well, another big issue, Jake mentioned the anterior musculature like the pecs. There's also the the actual rotator cuff, the subscapularis. If you're always in this position, or if you're like a powerlifter who bench presses all the time, the pressing has a lot of internal or medial rotation with it. So those will get dominant or shortened. Also a little less, and actually more and more, I've noticed the CrossFit community has kind of picked up on this and started putting a lot of videos about the lats. The lats are a strong internal rotator, and as the shoulder flexes, you need more length from the lat because the lats extend the shoulder. So as you come up, it'll tend to turn that upper arm in and make it harder to get a good rack position. You see people doing this all the time. That's probably a large part of their issue with the rack position.
Yeah, so what he was showing that people were doing is they were rotating their humerus.
Elbows out. Yeah, if you see the elbows flaring out and the hands like right in on the shoulder.
We're going to say that's going to be a rotator issue.
More than likely the lats.
Okay.
Tight lats, tight medial rotators, or shortened. Sorry, the physical therapist will kill me for saying tight. Short medial rotators.
This is Bro Science is welcomed here.
Okay, good.
We're keeping it loose and making things up.
Well, it's easy. I tend to refer to things that can just be sort of acutely limiting. Like if you warm up a little bit, stretch a little bit, you can get past it, and like in the moment. I use tight casually for that. Things that are going to take 7 weeks of directed mobility work to improve, we can go ahead and say that's shortened. Adaptive shortening, I think, is a much bigger issue than just being tight from sitting around all day.
The balancing is funny. Talking about how you have to work at balance consistently. I used to do this weird. I'm weird. I used to do this thing where I would brush my teeth on one foot.
That is weird.
Until I could balance the whole time I was brushing my teeth, and then I would switch to the other foot. And then when I got really good at that, I try to brush my teeth with my non-dominant hand, which if you've never tried it is actually extremely difficult. And I got very good at it, and one day I just stopped, and now I can't do any of those things at all.
You should start doing it again.
I know I should, but it's funny how you're talking about you can gain balance and lose balance depending on the frequency that you actually work.
Well, that's one of the good things about the neurological stuff, like things that tend to be heavily controlled by proprioception. You lose them very quickly.
Can you define that for people that know nothing about this?
Proprioception is your body's awareness of where it's in space.
Okay.
So balance, also there's a lot of neuromuscular considerations for that, like stretch reflex, like jumping, the fact that you get more, when you stretch a muscle, you get more innervation than you would if you just kind of lowered down and came back up.
Right.
All this stuff is proprioceptive. That sort of thing develops, and the neuromuscular stuff all develops very quickly. So getting it back, it's daunting when you lose it because you're like, oh God, I'm so weak or imbalanced or klutzy or whatever. I've lost these skills, but they come back fairly quickly, providing nothing else gets in the way.
Yeah, I feel like you definitely see that in the higher skill movements, like a snatch, or for us, maybe like a muscle up if someone hasn't practiced it in a while. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, a similar thing would be like the person who starts lifting. Neuromuscular coordination is where most of their gains, quote unquote, are going to come from. The NSCA at one time, I don't know what they say now, but back when I actually still, perused their book from time to time, said it took up to 8 weeks to begin to elicit hypertrophy, which is growth of muscle, because that's how long it took to get strong enough to stress the muscle sufficiently to grow.
Right.
And when you don't train, you will lose that coordination, and you'll feel much weaker, but it comes back very, very fast. And I think for people like Jake and I who deal with infants at home, or people who've had layoffs from training, gotten out of shape for lack of a better description, I think getting frustrated by that or intimidated by that is a mistake. If you just look back to how fast you got strong in the first place, your first 6 months of training, like, I will be the strongest man alive, because it's everything. If you can keep that progress up for 6 years, good Lord.
I've had members look at their first, I'll just say I'm thinking of one in particular, and this was a long time ago, made some very good gains in his Olympic lifts very quickly. And he had done the math that he would be an Olympian in years. And it was...
is he an Olympian?
He is not an Olympian.
Okay.
Well, that actually changes, too. After your first year or two, once you start to get a little bit more leg under you and reality starts to set in, and you realize that you have to change your body a little bit to get stronger, and you have to get more efficient and more proficient. you start looking at things, you start seeing things you won't be able to do. And that's a tough road for a lot of athletes. One thing I did before the weight room opened was I had a notebook, a training journal, that included all my like short-term, long-term, and lifetime goals. And when I opened the weight room, I lost it because I had everything in boxes. And then when we moved to the city in 2005, I found it again and had surpassed all of my lifetime goals. So
wow.
there's a perspective for reality there too. You gotta look around and realize that we only know what we've seen.
Save that, because that's actually what the show is going to be about after the break. Goal setting.
Goal setting. That's a good one. What else, what do we got before the break, though?
This is the perfect time for me to get into my favorite segment, things that we don't like this week. And I got this one, but you two are the ones that are actually going to be able to talk about it.
I got some things to add, too. I got one.
Can I rant on this for 1 second? When people use the word box instead of saying the word gym. Because what they don't realize is that was a PR marketing ploy by CrossFit, where they appropriated the word box, like big box store, like a Walmart or a Best Buy, and they made a CrossFit gym like the mom and pop versus the gigantic titan that is like American Family Fitness or Gold's Gym. And we carry it on to this day when CrossFit is now a titan in its own right in many
bigger
ways.
than that, yeah.
Right. And it's sort of silly. Plus, you just sound dumb when you're saying the word box.
I feel like it's...
We've never called it a box here.
I've never directly called it the box. I mean, if someone wants to say it...
I'm so gonna start.
We also used to never say WOD. We said WOD.
Right, that was our... We held on to that for a long time, but it's gone now.
It's gone now. I just want to say we didn't fall for any of the cool guy trends that happened. But you guys have more to say on this than I do.
Well, I feel like for newer members, maybe they don't... their first exposure to CrossFit at this point was probably outside the gym.
Not here.
And it was probably through the internet, through their friends, social media, things like that, and the first thing they heard was it was called the box. I don't know. It's nice to not use it because I feel like that's something that makes us. We're not everybody is like rocking the full like CrossFit outfit.
We're the anti-heroes of CrossFit.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. That is what we're shooting for. But if people use that's fine. But it's not something I'm going to be saying.
I have a super old school version of that. When I opened the weight room, we were a 990 square foot space in a strip mall with just some weights and a couple pieces of cardio equipment.
Wall to wall mirrors. I'm going to bring it up again.
Yes, yeah. We had a tanning booth too. That's a
really
tanning booth was
totally
still
story.
It was still around in my day.
That was a move I made to save the business, and when I sold it 7-8 years later, it had less than 100 hours on it. So,
but it was still a very sticky tanning bed.
No, it was a stand-up booth.
Oh, okay.
I walked into it one time. Yeah, I didn't turn it on.
Here's what's
I didn't inhale.
It had a really nice dressing room. So I basically had this like $10,000 dressing room. But it really, to open up back, it was a short version. We needed to refinance some stuff, and you have to show expansion, and then it's not a lot of ways to expand in a strip mall. So you add a $10,000 profit center, you can expand, refinance your loan, and then move your business.
Right.
And that it all worked out great. We got rid of it, lived happily ever after. But the thing that used to get me was when people would call it a gym, because to me a gym had a basketball court. I grew up at YMCA's, and so the gymnasium is where the basketball court is. So it's funny now that you say it's a gym, not a box. And that's why our brand, you ever see the signs or anything, somebody talking about the weight room, always see the weight room training center.
Yeah.
So you prefer it to be called a training center?
Well, it's cumbersome. It's bad. It's terrible business, but it is what it is. It is absolutely a training center. And I tend to make really bad marketing / business moves because if the right move seems wrong, I can't bring myself to do it. Other people will, and I see videos all over the internet of people going to the gym and they're outside the weight room. One in particular, he's always going to the gym, and it's the weight room.
Always going to the gym.
And that's fine. I mean, that's how people know it. They know it's now idiomatic. So it is a gym, but I prefer to call it a training center because we're not shooting hoops or anything. I'd love to have the space for a basketball court and a swimming pool and that kind of stuff, but it's really you go there to train for these things, not to do them.
Right. What was your thing you hate this week?
So this is for someone special.
I can't wait for this one.
This is I don't like it when people wear headphones and when they're in a setting where instruction is expected. because you can't hear what you need to hear while you're actually doing it.
Why would someone be wearing headphones in, what you're talking about, a CrossFit class, right?
A CrossFit class, or during the workout, maybe in the gym itself. I mean, if you stepped into this gym, you are it's expected that I'm going to work with you at some point.
Right.
That's what you're here for.
And you're not here to wear headphones and be in your own world.
Yeah. I mean, I guess some people, they want to hear their own music, and maybe they want to listen to it very loudly. Maybe they're tired of hearing people saying things to them, and they just want to shut it out.
That's what we see.
I know. I was going to say, I know very specific cases. I feel like you had a member at one point who spent years like that.
Years behind the headphones.
My favorite is, this could any time of year. They got the hoodie up, headphones in, because whatever gym they've been to before, they were the real lifter. And when you're walking into the weight room with 2, 3, 4, even 500-pound squat, you are not standing out. And to go in there and be, the tough guy, like real lifter, and you got your headphones on, and your hoodie up, and you're in your zone.
You're Eminem before the battle rap.
It's yes, you were Eminem before the battle rap, and that's kind of how everybody sees it. But I think we can all identify, at least to some degree, so they don't get a hard time. But I will crack that person, whatever it takes. I will say hi to them. I will follow them around the gym. I will load the plates for them. I will get a chalk bucket for them and they keep having to cut their thing off to talk to me and thank me. And sooner or later, I'll break them down, and they will admit that it's a good place to be involved and to talk to people. And we do have the short-term folks, so I don't think they're going to be around very long, and I'll leave them alone. But if I think someone's going to be at the gym for a year or so, I will do everything I can to explain to them that if they open up, they'll get a lot more help, which brings me back to my original point about thinking where you can go. If you open up your eyes and pay attention, you'll see that your potential is probably far beyond anything you can conceive on your own.
So his hoodies and headphones guy, are his palms sweaty? Is this hoodie covered in mom's spaghetti?
It's not it's not even a guy. It's probably, I don't know, at any given time, 20 members.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the challenge for you is that people are paying for open gym membership.
Sure.
So maybe...
and that freedom's expected.
Right.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that you're a wealth of knowledge, I'll say it. I think you, even if you won't, maybe it's just not expected when they're stepping through the door. When people come here, that's what they're paying for. So at least we sort of bridge that gap already.
Like we don't see that during the classes.
Oh,
that's if we have somebody come in for like a strength and conditioning program where they're coming in to get help with their Olympic lifts or for strongman stuff or whatever, they'll usually come in. Now, if they're getting ready to do a set or go for PR, they'll plug in and hit it.
Uh-huh.
But while they're going through the motions or walking around, they'll be open to the room and the coaches. And I think that's also a little difference in business models that we charge extra for that.
Right.
So while our gyms seem very cheap on the front end, when you get in there, if you want to start getting the level of help like a CrossFit's going to have, it's going to cost the difference.
It's about this. Yeah,
it's about the same. It comes out in the wash.
Similar process. Yeah.
So don't wear your headphones when you come to this gym or any CrossFit gym, because that's not what it's about.
Well, bring them if you're going to do a hard set and you want to focus and tune everybody out so you're not distracted. That's fine, but don't walk around with them and sort of cut the coaches out. I think that's there's really, if you're going to pay for coaching, get the coaching.
Yeah.
We're going to rip them out of your ears.
It's funny when I've been at your place more. I had like periods of time where I was coming a lot. I almost felt like I had to reel myself in. Like there's so many things I wanted to say, just to be helpful. But I realized these people, I'm like the last person that they want to hear. I'm just the other gym bro.
Not anymore. I think when you first started coming in, nobody knew who you were, and the fact that you were the only CrossFitter they knew.
Dude, in 2007, no. I mean, there's no reason I shouldn't have talked to anybody.
Yeah, but
I mean, it's. I didn't know anything.
But nowadays, I think the people around there know that you're some degree of an expert, and you. So they're pretty inviting of your advices, I think. I hope.
I still try to be respectful of what they've paid for, what they're there for.
Right.
But
I have to let a lot of stuff go. Somebody was telling me how great it is that you come in there and we're not going to let bad technique go, and I'm chuckling to myself because I let some terrible stuff go. If a person comes in there, they've been competing, training, doing whatever for years and years at a fairly high level, I'm not going to change how they do things unless they ask me to.
Yeah.
There's no reason for me to weigh in on that. If it's working for them, you can look at national world championships from all the Europeans, and you'll see things that would be, if they were lifting 200 pounds, terrible technique. But why intervene at that point? They're doing it. They're getting away with it. Now, if they want to go to the next level, they may need to shift some things around. And if they want my help, I'll give it to them. If they don't want my help, then that's their prerogative.
Is there a certain point where you do step in, like you're seeing something crazy?
If I feel like somebody is still a beginner and doesn't know it, I may intervene just to kind of clue them into the guy next to him, and I'll very passively say, well, look at how so-and-so does it, because they'll respect him for how much he lifts. They won't respect me for what I know.
You guys are killing the second half of the show right now.
This is nothing. Well, when you strike while the iron's hot,
That's
Matt.
right. You guys got this, though. Jake, what are we drinking this week?
You just cut it down.
Just
There's so many things going on. So many trains of thought.
Super segue.
Well, it's all gone now. We were drinking a little Belle Isle Moonshine. They have a new release, Honey Habanero. If you're watching the video,
the sparkling original Deer Park.
Deer
Chris
Park
had
does not
nothing to
sponsor
do
us.
with the Belle Isle. But
We are brought to you today, actually, by Belle Isle Shine, aren't we, Jake?
whether they know it or not,
Let
they
me
are
tell you
today.
about Belle Isle Craft Spirits. They carry on the tradition of premium moonshine, handcrafted with 100% organic corn, distilled in the finest copper stills, that pays respect to those who came before us. So if you want a good moonshine, drink a smoother spirit, be premium, and have Belle Isle Shine. Bam.
That wasn't a script at all.
Dude, I am good. I'm good at these plugs right now.
I feel like moonshine has changed since my day. Back when
Totally different.
back when I drank, moonshine was something you drank to go blind, not to really enjoy.
It wasn't a sipping beverage like it is now.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
This is delicious. I'm actually really surprised.
Yeah, we just mixed it with a little soda water.
I didn't want to drink spicy liquor,
Little ice.
but it's not that.
So this isn't even on the shelves yet. I don't know if you know this, Matt.
Exclusive.
Exclusive. I got a test batch a while ago. It was like 7 times hotter. So this is good. I really like what's happening here.
Tweak. So if you want some Belle Isle moonshine, go to Belle Isle, that's ISLE, craftspirits.com, and get yourself a bottle. We're going to go to a break, and we come back, we're going to talk about goal setting, and this is why I cut you off, the role of the coach.
I forgot about that part.
Yeah.
Let's do it. What if we start talking about How we talk about the meet? I mean, me and you both had like 1,000 people participating. It was
100% PRs.
It was like the biggest thing. It was the biggest thing that day on the internet.
All right, so let's recap the RVA Open.
Are we starting now? Are we
it's
here?
on. We're on.
Is this us? We're live.
We are still us, and we're going to talk about the RVA Open.
Is this real life?
One time in the Navy, I was in California, and I got Navy drunk.
It's a song, right?
And I was in the back of a taxi, which I got kicked out of, screaming, "What century is this?"
Matt's been kicked out of Tiki Bob's as well.
I've also been kicked out of Starlight.
I was there for Starlight. Because you were trying to pull a girl through a window.
Listen, I didn't know what was going on, and she said that she wanted to get back in, and I was trying to free the oppressed and get her back into the bar.
By pulling her through a window.
Pulled her through a window.
We won't use names, but one specific example of the headphone hoodie guy I was talking about earlier may have been the one that kicked you out of Starlight.
He probably was the guy who kicked me out of
God bless him.
Starlight. John Houston showed up and got in the guy's face and told him that he might have said he was going to kill him. I don't know.
Things happen. John's going to listen to this, so you better to corroborate that story.
Oh, he will corroborate that story.
Of the bouncers I've known, that probably wasn't the first or last time, even that night, somebody threatened to kill him. So they grain of salt stuff.
NBD, as they say.
That's right.
So, we had the RVA Open.
This past weekend.
Yes.
If you're listening in the future right now, that is
18th and 19th.
April 18th and 19th, 2015.
Yes. So that is one of the larger weightlifting meets and one of the larger and better promoted and
Yes.
more professional. I'm saying I put it on, so I'm talking it up a little bit.
I'll talk it up because I didn't put it on.
I have less bias than you might, and I can say for the meets I've been to, and I've been to, even Youth Nationals had more hiccups than your meet. I mean, I feel like I didn't see anything go wrong all day. It was very smooth. Even you had a few lifters, I guess dehydrated, pass out, whatever, and the meet kept moving. They were all okay. And those sorts of things are going to happen at any sporting event, and usually that will disrupt everything, throw a big wrench in the works. But even with like crisis, there was no real major delay or hiccup or challenge. It seemed like one of the most prepared events I've ever been to.
Jake has no emotions, so when people are close to death, he just lets it happen.
Not close to death. If you're hurt and you need to go to the hospital, I'll call an ambulance. That's what I got for you.
Over 1,000 lifters.
Now
There's over 1,000 lifters at the Open.
There was like 120, 130 lifters.
Which is huge.
We've been putting on meets since, I want to say 2011. Does that sound
Yes,
right?
that's
Probably
right.
for the Old Dominion Classic.
Danny's wearing that shirt right now.
Good. It's a solid shirt. Starting in 2011, we usually do 2 meets a year. They've all been solid. I mean, I was looking back, though, at old, like, our first score sheets, and it was like 20, 30 lifters for the first ones, which at that point was just fine because if you went elsewhere, you're still going to see 20 or 30 lifters.
Right.
Even, last year we had a couple big ones, but still, like 70 lifters.
Well, I'll say Sunday night, the Northern Virginia folks released an entry, a registration at 8 o'clock, and it was sold out by midnight.
Wow.
So I feel like I failed because I didn't do that.
But you did have
But they're
a-
still at 65. They haven't opened the second day yet.
You did have a bunch of big names, and Muscle Driver USA was a co-sponsor of the meet.
Muscle Driver USA was the title sponsor.
I don't know the words.
I'll give it to them. Title sponsor. They threw in big on this one. They brought us several lifters. They really
Lots of awesome equipment.
Yes, awesome equipment. They made I could not have done it without them, and that's not just like sponsor plugs. That's real.
We only do real talk here.
We only do real talk, except when we're reading off a website about
That's because
Moonshine.
Alex is our friend, and he makes this moonshine.
I think he's really going to appreciate it. He would not expect anything like that. So, anyway, yeah, some great lifters. We stepped up the production value a lot, and we had stage lights, a big backdrop. It's really funny. People kept walking up to me and saying how much more awesome this meet was. They'd always have to add the little caveat at the end, like, "Oh, your other meets were great. This one's just way better."
It looked like what we saw at the Arnold in a lot of ways.
Well, when I went to the Arnold, so I was like, this is pretty cool. I'd never seen a national level meet, and I think we can lump the Arnold in up there with the national level meet. And they're doing some simple things that made a huge impact. And I didn't even do it as well as they did, and nearly as well, I should say. And it still was pretty sweet.
But the point on the disclaimer about your other meets were fine, but I think they should always be better. I mean, if you don't progress, then why do anything?
That's what I was telling people. It's like, well, we just try to do it a little bit better each year. And I could see that the sport was growing. And, I realized that I wasn't growing probably as fast as the sport with how we were running meets these past couple times. They were doing fine, so I'd let them cruise. And I'd just say, all right, well, we're going to open up registration. We'll do it how we've always done it. We'll change a couple things. But this was a big step forward. I was happy with it.
We actually have a good segue right now.
What's that?
First good segue ever. Talking about how when you do anything, you should progress. When Kane snatched nearly 400 pounds, I was like, I'm going to go and I'm going to snatch way more than I've ever snatched. And when I woke up the next morning, when I was not, under the influence of that incredible feat of strength, I realized that I was doing what I always do. And I don't know if you guys see this a lot, but I have a problem. I call it keeping up with the Joneses. It's good for me to train with people that are better than me, and that's what I'm doing now. But at the same time, I'll start to chase things that either aren't beneficial for me or I have no interest in, so training becomes not fun at all anymore. And that sort of syndrome has marked my training for the past couple of years, and that's why Jake always says he never knows what I'm doing, because I am still searching for what I really like to do when it comes to training.
It's great when training can be fun. If you can do things you want to do and you're really excited about going to the gym, but at some point I think you need to adopt the mentality that there are things you have to do. If you say you want to snatch a whole bunch of weight, we have to say, well, what's keeping me from doing that? That's the taking your medicine part of the program.
Right.
You have to do those things, but at some point, I mean, it is going to have to be realistic and enjoy the fact that you're doing these things. Like somebody said to me the other day, they love working out in the morning because then they feel good about themselves all day. Well, when you do the things that are going to get you to the goals, get you the things you want to do, you will feel better about it after you've done it. As far as getting excited about the things happening around you, that's tough. I, as a coach, take terrible advantage of that. Somebody's at a meet, they're excited, everybody's doing well. I'm like, you should enter a meet. And I try to find a meet before that excitement wears off, just because I know that having those goals, having things they're training for will keep people in the gym, keep them making progress, and they'll get better long-term result as long as they continue to do things. When you lose interest, you get burned out or bored, or you have no direction in your training, it's easy just to stop and just to go in, spin your wheels, or maybe just not go in at all. I feel that excitement you describe is something that I've seen a lot and I've used a lot as a coach to kind of keep people motivated and focused and trying to get better at things. And ultimately, if you do that smart, if you don't get carried away or start chasing goals that are unrealistic, and getting hurt. As long as you stay healthy and focused and reasonable about your goals, I think it can become a very long-term healthy fitness endeavor. And I think that's something that maybe isn't a realistic thing to expect the athlete or the person, the trainee, to do. But as a coach, I think that's a good thing to recognize and utilize. Unfortunately for you, I think you're kind of holding your own reins, and that's going to make that very difficult. That's why a lot of coaches get hurt all the time.
Yeah, and I don't want to snatch a lot. My shoulder doesn't work, and it's legitimately, when I really think about what I really want out of all of this, not something that I care about at all.
What do you want to do?
Don't ask me that right now.
This is the Matt Cricchio intervention is what this is.
This is the intervention?
I've programmed for Matt
for 25 years.
For stretches, years at a time. We always have to stop talking for at least a year after I program for Matt.
Jake gets very offended at some points during programs.
You're a terrible person to program for. So I don't. It just is what it is.
I might have gotten I think Jake was preparing for a strongman contest once. It didn't have any deadlift, like real deadlift event in it. And there was a deadlift workout, just happened to come across because it's a great exercise. Even if you're not competing in the deadlift, you need to pick things up off the floor. It's a good thing to practice and train for. And I think the percentages, the relative intensity felt heavier than it should have, which this...
You program these workouts for him, right?
Yes, yeah. And the perception of should have is something I struggle with, because people don't know that if you wake up on a bad day, nothing's gonna feel light on a bad day.
Right.
If you're in the throes of a strongman specialization, you're not gonna have a lot of great days, between event days. And I got this really angry email, and I wish I could remember. It was something like, I struggled with weight. I pulled something along the lines of like back 20 pounds of body weight, and like 3 years of CrossFitting ago, I was pulling this weight easily, and super, I will say, Cricchio-esque. And in the email I got, and I kind of laughed at it because it was, to this point, Jake had always been like almost unrealistically even keel, well-tempered, and sort of almost as if he knew what I was looking for in his feedback. Like, right. He's very, very methodical about what he told me and how he said it to me. But this was, still to this day, the most emotional email I've ever gotten from Jake. And when he was talking about you, that's what I was hearing.
I was at the very least, I feel like I was at least polite. I was not the worst person in the world.
He's keeping an intense personality under wraps. I'm just letting you know that.
I think that started a trend. I feel like after that I sent like at least once every 6 months, I'd send at least one email like.
Well, they got more concerned than angry. This one was definitely like, do you really know what you're doing, Chris?
This is,
for God's sake, man. How many years do you have to do the same thing for a living before you figure it out?
You better find this email now, because I feel like it doesn't exist.
I still have the same AOL account from like 1975, so it should be in there.
Well, we've emailed each other at least 10,000 times over the past 7 years, so good luck.
So if you have someone that, I don't even really know where to start this, because I feel like my case is so specific and weird, but we were talking about goals before, and CrossFit's a lot different than perhaps what Chris does exclusively, but where someone who's been training for a while, maybe they're burnt out on one aspect, whether it's weightlifting or CrossFit, and they want to move towards something else. What do you mean
move towards something else?
So if someone is here and they're burnt out on CrossFit and they come to you and they're like, I don't know what to do anymore, I'm tired of CrossFit. Or in Chris's case, where there is no CrossFit at his gym, but there's multiple strength sports, you got to kind of be the psychologist to them. So like, how do you get them like in a frame of mind where they can...
If you don't want to do CrossFit, I just kick you out. There's I have a fast track to Chris's place.
Yeah, I get a lot of Jake's angry members. They come in there, they're like, so here you guys don't do CrossFit here, and
that's all they're looking for. They just don't want what we're doing.
We're
whatever
not
we're
CrossFit
selling
is what our brand is.
Which is funny, because you can do any of those here.
It actually ends up being more like a spiritual leader than a psychologist, because people are going to have to find something that they believe is a worthwhile endeavor. And so often, if they've been doing something long enough to get burned out on it, they just want to do anything else, and you've got to retread them, get them out of it. Some people get really hooked on what they've been doing. Like we have former CrossFitters that moved to Richmond, and a lot of our members that fit this mold, where they just don't want to go to a CrossFit. They want some freedom. They want to do some other things, and they want to, quote, get stronger. That's the one I hear the most. Is like, well, I want to go somewhere because I stopped getting stronger doing CrossFit. But then I watch these people do like 15 minutes of squatting and then like 30 minutes of box jumps and kipping pull-ups. And I wonder if they really don't want to do CrossFit, or if they've convinced themselves that they can just do it better than wherever they were. Because to get stronger, you need to actually, focus on strength. You can do the conditioning work. I think that's a terrible misconception that you can't maintain good condition and get stronger.
I was incredibly surprised. This is a little bit of a segue, a little off topic, but doing our competition program this past year, I was incredibly surprised by how much people could get stronger and do a ton of work on top of it. It just kind of blew my mind. It maybe wouldn't work for everybody all the time, but for some people in certain situations, people were hitting, probably upping their, say, running and rowing mileage or volume just incredibly, but also going through a very challenging squat program and putting lots of weight on their lift. They would probably still be, I'd consider them intermediate lifters, so not like, they haven't gone too far down that path. I did not survive in that way because I've done
a little bit more advanced. Yeah.
I've done the same squat cycle like we were doing we talked about last time. It was actually the 6-week Russian squat template everyone's seen.
Yeah.
Burnley wants to know more about that.
I've done it.
It's been around longer than I have.
And I just didn't make it. I knew I couldn't. But
well, you also had an idea what you should be squatting, and probably weren't too as conservative as you probably should have been.
Right.
Yeah, an advanced lifter should be very conservative when they plug their 1 rep max into those sorts of things. One thing I was going to point out, and this is working with the various phases of periodization and athletes from different sports, not just strength sports, but we will see the occasional ball field court athlete, track folks from time to time. And one of the things you'll notice is the lifting, the gym work that gets done when they're getting into their sport has to be about maintaining what they've developed. And often you'll see some bizarre PRs come in because of the realization of efforts put in before the actual season. You don't want to chase those things. Injury risk is something that's paramount at that point. But with the realization phase, I think what you probably saw where these people started to specialize more for their season of the Open, they were realizing the work they had put in kind of coming into fruition during that. That's what I would predict.
Talking about that too, we had people actually during the Open or immediately before and after hitting huge lifting PRs, which was very new to us this year, which was kind of cool at the same time. I think, again, it was one of these, we had been lifting a lot the whole year. They were probably always accumulating a little bit of fatigue, a little bit of, and suddenly we backed up the lift.
It won't hold up, but it's nice to see.
Yeah, we backed up the lifting, and even though their conditioning was up, I think it was the recovery they needed. And then, I just sort of, haphazardly, it was like, we need some overhead work. Whatever, I'll let you guys do jerks out of the rack and go heavy if you're feeling good. And then it was just like PRs all over the place on that particular day.
Earlier I mentioned the trends being the art of training, like knowing how to manipulate the trends, seeing the things that are missing from the direction you want to go, adding them out without saturating them, without bursting the bubble, so to speak. That's putting in, we need overhead work, putting it in. That's experience. That teaches you that. That's a very, very smart thing to do. Another thing I noticed with you guys, it seems like y'all at least outline your programming annually, which is something I don't know if other CrossFits do it, but if they're going to compete in the Open, I think they absolutely should.
It's funny. So we absolutely do outline our programming annually. We've gotten better at it each year. And it's interesting. I had at the Superfit Games training camp this past weekend, we had a Games athlete and a top-of-the-pack regionals athlete over. It was Gary and Aaliyah Helmick. And it was funny to hear that their approach was very different. They only program a week out at a time.
Oh, wow.
And this is, they're stud athletes. And they've...
Bro Science calls that instinctive training.
Yeah, so it's, it was funny. They would say that there's certain trends.
Instinctive training is bro science?
Well, instinctive training is, what happens, you have the instinctive guys and then you have the detail guys. At the weight room, we see a lot of computer programmers or developers, depending on what they want to call themselves. And these guys will... program out however far, whatever their end goal is, and they will write the math out that in a perfect world they would actually get there. Coincidentally, what's that?
I think about the little 1 kilo at a time. Hey, if I add 1 kilo to my snatch every other week.
Well, what happens is life, and then they're surprised when there are hiccups in there and it doesn't happen perfectly. The best powerlifter we've got a very good powerlifter at the gym right now, but back in the day, our best powerlifter was a programmer. And he wrote in a margin of error, a window for how far he could adjust his reps or sets or weights. And he killed it. He always went up because he was always ready to have a bad day. These other guys come in and I see them, they start cutting their squats, they start missing things, and they get confused because the math says they should be able to do it. I refer to that as getting too close to your work, or you can't see the forest for the trees. The problem with the instinctive guys is they don't know where they're going. They're sort of walking through the woods without any idea where they're trying to end up. You need to take both of those. Like, take a step back if you're a detail guy and say, okay, what is actually happening in this program? What am I actually trying to do? How am I going to account for the normal fluctuations in life? And if you're one of those people who trains instinctively, just have a calendar. Set up something. Like, Jake's probably seen my I've sent you those before. These little like Word document calendars are just tables, and it's just, here you go, here's where we want to end up. And then I will program week to week for people based on feedback, but you've got to have a good idea, a good plan, and some sort of flexibility to that plan.
I will say for them that they knew certain things were going to happen every single week. They might just not plan it out as detailed and as like long term as us. They also don't think we have certain emphasis on certain parts of the year. There's some broad periodization going on,
which is what I was referring to as being so smart. Is that you guys will use the things you're going to do in this gym anyway to build towards the end result of performing well at the open, performing well for your weightlifting group or your strongman competitors, and that's I think that's a very smart way to do it.
I feel like our people are the best they've ever been, so I guess it's going. That's going all right.
All anybody can hope to be.
So Matt, you hit on how we take care of people who have been doing CrossFit for a while, right, and then need like some sort of shift in perspective and like something to get them going again. Which we of course see a lot, and a lot of times it's not like do something different than CrossFit. And you talked about this in the first episode. Sometimes it's just like, hey, let's, within the whole realm of CrossFit, set a single goal, like let's do a pull-up. You've been here for a couple of years, you haven't done a pull-up yet. Let's like figure out how to get you there. And that's a big thing. But rewinding back to people starting off, I think it's equally important for those who are getting started with training to start with some goals up front.
Right. And I don't got that much to say on this, but I think
you look like you're going for something.
Well, the one thing I was thinking about when you're talking is there's probably three types of people here. There's people that come here that just want to work out, and it's just maybe the activity of showing up here day after day is what satisfies whatever their need is. So the person that hasn't done a pull-up in 3 years, there could be people that don't care because all they want to do is show up here every day and they're fine with that.
But I don't know if that's sustainable.
Well, and I agree. No. But I'm just trying to classify people right now, putting people in boxes.
I'll put a description of what Jake's talking about. It's called tangible goals. Goals have to be tangible.
Right.
If you put this unattainable goal out there, or this very, very ambiguous thing like, I hope to maybe one day do this.
I just want to be in shape one day.
Yeah, that's not tangible. That means nothing.
And I agree. One thing I think there's the people that don't know they should be setting goals, which I would say are the ones that don't.
So the ones that don't care and the ones that just don't know.
Don't know. And then there's another trend I think that happens here is the people that are super serious about their fitness. They're the ones that I see get burnt out on one thing and then go, I want to weightlift now, Jake. I want to do strongman now.
I think it's funny that people don't think they can do all these things. I tell the story a lot, so I'm going to try not to make it too rote. But like 2003, I did 13 competitions. I didn't win all of them, but I won a few, and it was powerlifting, strongman, bench only, and I did even one Olympic weightlifting meet in there. It was a year I started competing in strongman and found that a strongman contest isn't that much harder on us than how we train for strongman, and powerlifting is just what we do in the gym, and weightlifting is probably the easiest from my perspective to sustain because of the lack of eccentric stress. You're not doing a whole lot of training that day.
Right.
The thought, for sure, if you're going to like a national meet, a big time meet, or you're trying to qualify for something, you need to specialize leading up to it. But general training, off-season work doesn't have to be specialized. You can still train and have fun and enjoy what you're doing without, that's another thing, especially with the powerlifters at the gym, they'll often like want to do something different for a little while. So they'll do like a lot of reps, or they'll take up Olympic lifting, and they'll completely get away from heavy squatting and pressing and pulling, and then they're surprised how weak they get. You don't have to stop lifting heavy to take a break from powerlifting. You don't have to stop Olympic lifting, doing multiple compound lifts to take a break from Olympic weightlifting. The thought that you had to like throw something away or like get away from it to take a break from it, you don't have to. You don't want to lose that skill set. I was going to weigh in earlier. I realized I've never actually hands-on worked with a single competitive CrossFitter, but I feel like if they ever needed a break, the first thing I would advise them to do is to maintain skill practices. Put them at the end of your workouts, beginning of your workouts, depending on the nature of the skill. Put it into your warm-up. maintain these skills in the very likely event that you go back to CrossFit. Losing these skills, getting rusty on them, losing your ability to brush your teeth on one leg is going to be something that you're going to pay for when you go back. Maintaining those skills as part of your regular training, I think, is going to be the easiest way to stay happy and effective and versatile in your training.
Well, even if you get those skills back, it is, I feel like, fairly quickly. It's a huge mental challenge if you have lost those, and then suddenly you feel like you're so much further behind, and you don't, again, like we were talking about earlier, you don't realize that it doesn't take necessarily that much to sort of get back in the groove there and get moving.
From a strongman perspective, when I took a break from events, I told you guys I was just kind of doing the things as they came up in the gym, training just to get stronger. And, the log doesn't come around too much.
I was thinking about the log.
Yeah, I don't like it. Some guys are fish in water on the log. They love it. They kill it. They win it. I'm not that guy. I don't think Jake was.
No, God.
We have guys at the gym who are. Danny Klingenpeel is probably, from a technical perspective, one of the best in the country on it.
I was working with Morgan earlier, and I was just thinking, I was picturing Danny on the log. I was like,
well, working with Danny, seeing the things work for him, and utilizing those and changing them for myself has made it far easier to coach it over the years. In the past 5 years, he's gone from being a bottom-level local competitor to I would put safe money on him getting his pro cards this weekend in Chicago. And there's a log for reps, which he's going to kill. So the point of this being, I picked up a log, and just to tell you how great I am at taking my own advice, I missed 85% of the contest I just entered, the rep weight. I couldn't get it overhead to save my life. And now in 2 or 3 weeks of practice, I got it back, like you said. But it really is a daunting thing to lose a skill. So my advice to folks, set tangible goals. And then when you take breaks from things, try to find a way to employ the skills you developed very minimally as part of your warm-up or active recovery. Just keep them in there so you don't lose that ability.
So beyond the people who are sort of burnout, who are looking for things, again, getting back to the first timers and new people, I think they need to, I think it's incredibly important. I was just talking with a member about this, for them to establish goals very early in their training. Maybe not day one or something, because I think for some people, the initial challenge is getting in the gym.
The why are you here goal?
Yeah.
Why do you want to work out?
I think if you haven't worked out and you show up here, you should probably hang out and just do whatever happens for like 6 months to a year.
Well, I think, maybe
I
that's
kind
a
of agree
little
with
long.
Matt,
well,
actually.
I think the first goal is to get in the gym, train frequently,
Right.
establish habits.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, like, what is carrying those habits? Like, what is making those habits persist? And again, if you're just the type of person who just, you just work out because that's just something you do on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday after work. At some point, something else is going to come up and say, maybe I don't need to show up today.
Right.
I see as a gym owner, I have to worry about, are my members getting what they're coming here for? Are they staying around?
And that's my next question to you guys. What's your role as coaches? I mean, you're about to get into that, but what is your role as coaches in helping people set goals? And then what do you do once they have goals?
I think initially, and this is something I really want the members at the gym to understand, is that if you've been coming around, if you have established your habits, you should start to put some goals into place. And they can be whatever, they're your own goals. They don't have to be something like we tell you. If they're just all aesthetic, hell, maybe balance them out a little bit. If you want to lose 5 pounds or something like that, maybe also toss in, I want to be able to do a strict pull-up by the end of the year or something.
Why do you think that's important?
I just think for us,
makes it more tangible for one. Losing 5 pounds, I can lose 5 pounds by tomorrow, but it's not going to be worthwhile.
Can I bump it up? Let's say 20 pounds.
Okay.
I'm just talking trash now. But I think there's
the pull-up, being able to do a strict pull-up, relative strength, something that has to do with your own body weight, is going to be a worthwhile benefit of losing that 5 pounds.
Right. Yeah, they're related, but and I want people to be, I think that's part of the culture of the gym, to be not just look awesome, but be strong and capable and fit.
And I think that's what takes what we do and what Chris does out of the American Family Fitness Gold's Gym range. Is this is not just a place where you lose weight and look good naked. There's other things that
those things are all okay, but
yeah, of course they are.
They should be what happens by taking care of yourself.
Right.
They should not be the sole reason you go to the gym.
Yeah, and that's the culture that exists here and at the weight room.
I also feel
obviously.
Because there's certain things about I don't have a better word, but it's empowering to be able to know that you are a strong and capable person. There's something that kind of sucks about knowing you can't do some very basic things in life. Like, I mean, I feel like it's nice to know, like, you can, I mean, you're sort of in control of your own body, that you can, like, I don't know, you're not going to go for a hike and, like, just, I don't know, just get stuck out there.
Did you know that
It might happen.
I saw the other day that only 14% of people, Americans, have gym memberships? So think about how many people are out there
You
that
said
like
14%?
14%.
Used to be much higher. I did that research years ago, and what I thought was more disturbing is that only like 27% of them or something, less than 30% actually use their gym membership.
Right.
That's what I found disturbing, because we don't see that. I'll see a third of the gym in a day.
So there's so many people walking out there that like they're gonna go on a hike and die.
And that's not, I feel like that's a little disappointing, you know?
It's very disappointing.
I feel like you should know that. I mean, I remember when, story time, when we first started doing CrossFit and training as 20-year-olds, we thought we were way cooler than we were. Like, maybe it was like sort of a blown out effect.
God,
like,
we
it was
thought we were
too
so
empowering. Like, we went from being like skinny or fat to less of either and much stronger. And but you know, not even that much stronger, really.
Not really strong at all.
And one time, I remember on New Year's Eve.
Oh, this story. This whole podcast is about me getting kicked out of bars.
I'm gonna keep adding on.
All right,
I hate those
here we
stories.
go.
I'm glad Jake didn't know me back when.
We thought we were so cool. I was not a part of this. I was trying to get to the bar. New Year's Eve.
I was with he whose name we do not mention.
We can just, that makes it even worse.
I like telling it like that.
All right, but so I don't even know the story. Matt and this other guy thought they could get in a fight and win.
No,
they just got
we
tossed
never-
out on their asses
We
in
got
front of New York Deli.
Millions of people.
And then Matt,
I won't weigh in on this at all. I bet I knew who that bouncer was. Which is
Matt,
no shame in
because
that.
we thought we were so awesome, we wrote a blog post retelling the story.
I'm gonna let you have this moment. Go ahead, have it. Go
Matt
ahead.
wrote a blog post where he talked about how awesome he was during this fight.
No, that's not what. Go ahead.
Because he did CrossFit, and he was just so strong, and
Powerful.
He just didn't
agile.
get tossed out on his ass by like 30 people.
Obviously, if you do
looking like an
65-pound thrusters, you can punch really hard.
And then so he writes his blog post, which we thought no one was going to read, and it just I think
Tons of people apparently read it.
someone read it and was like, I was there that night.
You guys were testosterone-filled animals.
Yeah, you were just idiots, roided out. You took your shirts off in the middle of the bar.
I never took my shirt off in the middle of the bar ever. We lost all 5 people listening to this thing right now.
No, I think this is when it just hit its peak.
It's the train wreck variable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it.
People have to look.
So it's empowering. That's all I'm getting
It's
at.
it's very empowering to work out.
So, backing it up a little. Oh, God. Backing it up a little bit. For my members, for people listening, maybe who aren't members, I would say you should establish some goals pretty quickly into your training career. Within the first, the first 3 months, honeymoon period, no matter what, maybe first 6 months or a year even, every time you walk in the gym, if you're doing something correctly, it should be a PR day.
Victory.
Basically. You should be getting better at something. You should be moving better. That's not going to last forever. So I'd say get some tangible goals right up front, and figure out how you're going to get there. I'd say the role of the coach is to make sure that those coach, terrible word. Make sure that those goals are that they're going to happen for you, that they make sense, they're not too out of control. Not like, hey, I'm going to go to the Olympics next year, but more like, hey, I'm going to get a first pull up, and then just help you figure out how to get there.
Yeah, Matt had asked about what the role of the coach is in goal setting, and I think that's it. Making sure that this person is making goals and going in a direction, and not maybe projecting something that's going to be dangerous or disappointing, and that the goals have some sort of progression to them, like one thing leads to the other. You work as the governor, and that's I don't mind coaching that scenario. I do think it's funny that every personal trainer now is a coach. And if you're certified to help people work out, you're now a coach.
You have interesting ideas about the difference between coaches and instructors.
Yes, yeah. I think more coaching and instruction. I think instruction is something you do. We'll start with teaching. If I was going to teach somebody, like earlier when I was showing stuff to the people listening, and obviously they would have no idea what I was demonstrating, you were describing it. That description, that information, and conveying it in a way that people can remember it, that's teaching. Giving people a lesson, something that they can take away. Instruction is helping them do it. Coaching is moving them through it, directing them through it. So when you teach somebody the information, you explain what it is, you give them that, they know what a snatch is or what a clean is. When you instruct them, you're now just describing it, helping them through it. And then coaching is when you get in there to the cues, you're actually trying to make something happen. I have a really hard time when somebody is in their work sets and, Johnny Coach wannabe guy walks up and starts telling them their elbows aren't high enough. And they're like, okay, well, I'll get my elbows up. And they get their elbows up and he's like, okay, well, that time you did this. And really just negatively tearing the lift apart. That's the stuff you do when they're warming up, when they're working their way up there. You get all that stuff right before the work sets are on the bar, before the work weight's on the bar, because once they're actually working, once they're trying to use power and move effectively, you've got to have that ironed out already. Or have accepted these things that they're not going to do in that workout and let them get through the meat and potatoes and get back to it next time. If it's bad enough where it's poor movement or dangerous movement, so poor it's dangerous, you pull them back, fix it, and go back up. Particularly with like the multiple compound lifts or some of the strongman events, things that carry a little bit more risk if done improperly. We've had some interns at the gym who will come up to me while I'm working on somebody's bar pad. They're swinging the hell out of the bar, jumping over the platform, and I really don't care if they catch a 50% clean in their hands. I've seen them front squat. I know they can rack it right, so we're going to work on that first. And I get the bar moving right, then we'll worry about the rack position, so on and so forth. There's just one very specific example of many. I mean, probably hundreds at this point. And I will have to sit there, and while I'm trying to correct this person before they get to their work weight, I've also got to explain to the other coach who is trying to tell them every single point of what they're doing wrong. And you cannot fire a whole bunch of cues at somebody once they're past the instruction point. And that's, I guess with this sort of example, I was still instructing. But once they're at their work weight, you're not going to sit there. If somebody's at a meet and they're going out there for an attempt, you're not going to say, okay, well, remember to let that bar, really come in and, pop those elbows up high and catch a good rack position. That person's probably going to miss that lift if they're thinking about all that stuff while they're trying to move. You cannot move consciously, effectively. You've got to learn, instruct, and then coach. And that's, or be coached.
Yeah, I mean, I find that with sort of static positions and setup, you can get away with a fair amount up front. But once people start really moving and they're moving fast, you have to it's very easy to go too far. And it's like, I find that myself even, I'll do it, I'll give them one too many cue and I see just instant negative. Yes, things get worse and very quickly. A
golfer gave me a term for that. All right, first off, it's cliche. I tell people the start position is the one thing you can really coach because people aren't moving yet. So we spend a lot of time on the start position with everything at the gym. But then I was working with a golfer, teaching him how to do cleans back in the early 2000s. And he actually came to me because he was another client's father. And I was describing to him, don't think of all these things. Try to get your mind around how this is going to work. Relax a little bit, get your start position, and then just move naturally. And he's like, okay, you mean like a swing thought? Golfers have what they call a swing thought, like the place your mind is when you're swinging the club that makes you swing it right every time. And as a coach, you're trying to direct that lifter towards their, swing thought, for lack of a better word. You definitely don't want to swing your Olympic lifts. But with any of the more complex movements, you want to have their mind in that place. Sometimes if something is very wrong, like say they arm pull, I'll say dead arms or get the slack out of the hook, whatever, in the start before they go, and that will be their thought the whole lift because that's the one thing they're doing the most wrong. And there's countless examples of this. Another thing, we'll derail again. It's going to be the longest podcast ever.
We're at 3 hours already. It's okay.
You guys know what the word slack means, right?
In terms of...
what's the context?
It's taking the slack out of something.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If I said take the slack out of the bar, to get taught the opposite of slack. Young people don't know this, apparently. And I have had, finally, one of our interns confessed to me that she didn't know what the word slack meant. God bless her, because I have asked probably 10 people since then, and none of them knew what the hell I was saying when I said take the slack out of the bar.
Every once in a while, I will find there'll be a mass confession that some cue I've been using, they had no idea what I was talking about. But the deceptive thing was they were doing what I wanted them to do, but maybe because they just sort of figured out what I was looking for. But it wasn't the words I was using. It was not making that direct relation.
I'm going back to the 90s, teaching people how to deadlift. Your arms are ropes, take the slack out of the bar, and
I feel like that still works. I support this.
Good God. I mean, how many people have I told these cues that they just, at what point did slack fall out of our vocabulary?
You need to buy a whole bunch of people a dictionary right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
You'll get a dictionary every time you sign up for a gym membership.
what I think is important is that somebody actually had the wherewithal to tell me that they didn't know what it meant instead of just pretending. I feel like I'm pretty hard on interns when they try to coach, and they're basically they instruct and or teach all the way through the movement. At no point do they stop trying to make everything look the way they want it to look, or starting to try
overcompensation maybe.
Yeah, and they also will see very little. So that one thing they've got that they've got a nail. They're gonna hammer. They have a hammer, and everything's going to be a
Dude,
nail.
that's knees out now.
That's the Nick Minetti analogy. He used to always say, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And that was his criticism of everybody coaching everywhere at any given time.
Nick Minetti was a powerlifter.
Yeah, 2100 raw total. Yeah, he's
he's
very strong.
Isn't light.
Well, he was the first person to do that. So he did first person to squat 800 in competition with just a belt, drug tested, and the first person to total 2100 raw in competition.
And what you remember at various points in the history of the weight room.
When he hit these numbers, I'm taking credit for it.
The important part.
I can't take credit for anything Nick did. He trained at a bunch of great gyms along the way and came in strong. We just happened to give him the facility where the support to do what he did. He definitely was his own lifter.
I think we see that what you're talking about in the CrossFit community about knowing and seeing one thing and only just talking about that. That's why I just said the knees out thing, because Kelly Starrett and all that, it's the most, I hear it here all the time, like just regular people going, push your knees out. And I'm like, pushing your knees out is not the problem on every single squat.
No, it's not. It's the problem if somebody's getting on top of their legs, or somebody's having a hard time getting depth because their hip flexors are tight. There are times to say knees out. Every lift is not that time.
I'll find if I learn something new, or if I just catch on to something,
You see it a lot more.
You see it. There's a name for that, and it's like if you, it's like if you're looking to buy a certain kind of car, then that's all of a sudden the only kind of car you see on the road. There's right. God, I heard the name recently, and I can't remember it now. Look it up. I don't know how you'd look that up. There's no way. Wikipedia can't help you now. I'll see that there's certain things maybe a couple years ago, I just had sort of a realization on for the Olympic lifts. There was issues with people with bar path off the floor actually getting the bar back to them some, and then suddenly I realized so many of my lifters were having these issues. So I find that I still sort of that's one of the first things I go to is are you leaving the bar out in front?
Well, that's not a bad thing to focus on, because you can fix that a lot of the time you can fix that in the start position. Mm-hmm. And again, that's the best time to coach somebody, to really instruct them, because they if they do that right, the bar should be moving into them from the start.
Getting back to the swing thing, and I feel like we're just talking now. Maybe this is what a podcast is supposed to be. We're just talking.
That's it.
What do you think? You're the producer here.
I'm totally comfortable with everything that's happening.
All right, so Kane, talked to Kane this weekend, and someone asked him,
lifter, yeah.
what do you think about in the snatch? And I feel like he just said something like...
Kane Wilkes, by the way.
Yeah, I just snatch. I just think snatch. Or be fast, or something like that. Just be aggressive. And I think that's... ultimately the goal, once you have all the other little things out of the way, is especially for an Olympic lift, it's just being fast, being aggressive.
He does damn near the same thing every time too. So he's a very consistent lifter.
Right.
Right down to fixing the glasses.
Yes, which really funny. I guess at the Arnold, people didn't realize that was part of his routine, and I just took it for granted because I've seen him lift so many times over the years. And the first time he gets on stage, first snatch, he yells. He grabs the bar, sits down a little bit, adjusts the glasses. Everyone laughs. There's which I was maybe a lesser experienced lifter would be man, this is gonna mess my lift up. Everyone just laughed at me. He just went. He was fine.
He snatched over 350 pounds at that point.
He did 180 at that meet, which was 2 or 3 kilos off his PR. He also duck walked it, which was sort of his first time having to run a lift out like that. But
396 for the kilo impaired.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
Not too shabby.
American.
Not too shabby, but I thought it was important for just that at a certain point you just have to just do the lifts, and if you have more than one thing to think about, you're kind of screwed in terms of actually working with a coach. When I hate it when I am at a meet and I hear 7 Qs getting blasted out, but I think
saw some fairly high level coaches doing that at the RVA Open, and I won't name any names, but it was tough to hear. Because the whole time I'm sitting, either with a lifter next to him or back, in the audience if we didn't have any lifters at the time, and I hear them just firing instructions at athletes at that level in a competition, thinking you are really, I hope they're not listening to you at this point. I hope your athlete has fired you in their mind.
I think the worst part is when I hear the same cue used for every lifter.
I heard a lot of that when I was there.
Can everybody, I don't know if everyone can really need that same cue.
I will say big hit an awful lot, because when you spend a lot of time setting people up, they forget that they have to finish hard. And in the gym, I coach and I use that at that point, and so it's more of a Pavlovian thing. Like they hear big hit, like, oh yeah, I got to finish.
It's time to go.
Yes. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think about what the few lifters we're working with right now, and that we had at the Open. It was like they needed fairly specific things, like maybe there's, usually honestly setup issues, or like things happening immediately at the lift. Like they were getting there. For my guys, at least, there was like things like full extension and stuff weren't the issue. It was like getting the bar in the right place before
like I said, take
happened.
your time an awful lot. We had a lot of new lifters in this one, so I was reminding people not to just go out, grab the bar, and lift. So you've got a minute to get it above the knee. It's not
right. It's a challenging environment getting into a meet for your first time. Like you don't you're in front of people. It's everyone's looking at you, and
well, there's a clock, and I don't think anybody has any idea how fast they can get a lift done. And so you could tell the more experienced guys. It was funny. Some of the young folks sitting out there like working the clock down like they're at the IWF World Championships or something. It's like really kind of playing their rest intervals. And
I saw one guy get down to a second.
Yep, I saw that. Yeah.
Make his lift.
He probably has. There are some famous lifters who have done that historically, who would always like run the clock out, and the commentators in the old Iron Mind videos would talk about it. And that's probably where that sort of thing was learned. I don't think anybody just decides they're going to use all their time and risk timing out on a lift.
It was really close. I was quite worried. I don't know if I've really ever seen. Maybe just a couple times I've seen people time out on accident.
I think I've seen a timeout because somebody didn't hear their name. They're still back in the warm-up room. I don't think I've ever seen one on the platform.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, that sucks.
So Matt, we're at like an hour and 17 minutes. Not quite, but what do we got? Anything else on the menu?
No, I think we can wrap it up. You guys showed what good coaches think about and how they speak to each other. Do you have anything to plug, Chris Lawyer?
I do. Last time I forgot, one of my longtime members, national level strongman in his own right, is also a primary care physician. And he and his wife, who is a doctor as well, have opened a practice in Mannequin-Sabot called Centerville Family Practice. The website is centervillefp.com.
With so many of our listeners probably in this area, at least right now, I feel like that's a good thing to know.
Well, I plugged him on Facebook, and because he's not that guy who's going to tell you just quit training. He's going to look at what you're doing, what you can do. He's familiar with what we do. He's familiar with CrossFit. He's familiar with weightlifting. He's competed in weightlifting, strongman. He knows powerlifting, and so he'll be able to give you better advice about what you should and shouldn't do, treat it accordingly. There's actually a physical therapy clinic right next door to his, and I think it's a really good fit for the people who will be listening to this podcast. So if you need a primary care physician for just your family, the family doctors, or specifically somebody to go to first, when you first think like, okay, I might have to have somebody look at this thing, he's probably where you want to go first.
Yeah, I've sent Kat there.
It's gonna Centerville Family Practice, centervillefp.com.
He was at the RVA Open. He was loading.
He saved a few lives too.
When we had
here.
two, I will say, mishaps.
Yes.
And he was the guy who was checking people out for each one.
Yeah, I thought
they were both fine.
Well, at one point,
it was great to have him here.
At one point, somebody had taken a pretty good shot, and he was like, "It's really going to make a difference for them if they ice or don't." And he came to me a few times, I think, trying to find somebody who knew the person well enough to make them ice their injury. And but he really, I think. It was just in that environment. He knew these people wanted to continue, and he's able to tell one guy, if you want to continue, you're probably fine. Another guy's like, I wouldn't advise it. And, I think having a doctor like that, most of my life I've avoided having a primary care physician. I just hit patients first like everybody else, and then listen to them or don't because, typical athlete. But in this case, you actually will have a doctor you can listen to.
I feel like a lot of people do not trust the medical establishment, so in the training community. So it's good to know you can have somebody you trust.
Right.
Matt, you should talk about the nutrition challenge real quick.
Okay, so we had a survey go out, and we got a lot of responses. We're actually impressed by the number of responses, and your voices have been heard. So if you go to CrossFit RVA, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to unveil a performance nutrition challenge that has been revamped. So be on the lookout for that. And I would say that'd be in 4 to 6 weeks probably for the launch.
Yeah, soon. So
Soon. We're going to do some cool things for you guys because we know exactly what you want now.
Very nice. Are we all done?
We're all done. If you're an international listener, we're sorry about that. We still got to speak to the people that are actually listening.
Yeah. All right, guys. Until next week, it's just exercise.